This podcast contains content that is graphic in nature and mature language that may be unsuitable for children or young listeners. Listener discretion is advised. On April 6, 2012, Catahoula Parish Sheriff's Office 911 dispatcher received a call around 8:20 p.m. from a female caller that said she needed the law there fast at the address of 975 Moody Road. This was in the Larto Lake area, and as officers responded, they had no way of knowing that just 4 months later, this address would be the scene of arguably one of the most gruesome homicides anyone from this small community would ever see. Get ready to take a deep dive in this 3-part series into a case that ignited the flame for this podcast's existence. Today, we will discuss what happened in the investigation and the manhunt for the prime suspect, part 1 of 3, today on episode 16 of Sin Law. Welcome back to Sin Law. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Kyler.
And this is going to be
a trip.
Oh, we're going to pack every suitcase. We're going to pack extra. You know what? We're just going to rent and go to the laundromat while we're there because it's going to be a while.
And when I win my money, I'm going to Disney World.
That's right. So basically, I can't tell you guys how excited I am, and I know it's really weird to say about a case like this because we're talking about a triple homicide, and I'm telling you I'm excited to talk about it. I'm excited. Well, because I've sat on this thing. I learned about this almost 2 years ago.
They don't even know about the things you've sat on.
And I've had to, I literally told, and I've talked to this and about this case to everybody that would listen to me talk about it because it's that interesting. It's that enthralling. There's so much going on, and that was the reason why I was like, you know what, I should start a podcast because this would make an amazing episode on a podcast. And I started a podcast, and then I didn't do this episode. I didn't tell this story until now. You're welcome. So basically what I've done though, because like I said, I've spent ridiculous amounts of time working on this and researching and digging into every nook and corner, nook and cranny, all of the things. I'm gonna get there. I'm tired. All right, so I have dug deep into this, and I'm actually going to get even deeper into it in the following days here. But we'll get into that in the next episode. So, point being, I broke it down into 3 separate parts because that's literally how much of a volume this thing has and how much time it would actually take to explain. I think the last time, and this is not the first time that we've recorded this episode. Technically, we've recorded it once before, but we had a lot going on. My niece, Peyton, who was also in another episode with me, the triple homicide, familial intergenerational homicide that we did, the Mark Morris case. She was on that one with me, and she was here, and we recorded this episode. We had actually broke it up into 2 parts the last time, but when I went back and tried to edit and see how that one went, it was kind of a train wreck that ended in a dumpster fire. So
she thinks that. I think it was wonderful.
At some point here in the very near future, hopefully by the end of January, we will have a Patreon, and that will be in the included list of things behind a paywall that if you want to listen to it, you are more than welcome. I don't know why anyone would, but it'll be there. So
it was fun.
Yeah, well, when you have a drunk person popping in and out every 30 minutes or so of an episode, it keeps it interesting, keeps people on their toes, but it's not good for actual episodes. Neither is cats fighting, so I apologize if you guys heard that. So basically that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and get into the episode now because there is a lot, and this is about 3 minutes of intro, which is, I think, the longest non-episode start time that we've done in any episode so far. So, all of that aside, let's get into this holy mess. All right. So,
holy matrimony.
In the intro, I was speaking about April 6th of 2012. So we're in 2012. This is Catahoula Parish. This is actually I think it's the most southern part of Catahoula Parish. It's called the Larto Lake area. Larto Lake was a man-made lake. They put up a dam sometime in the past. I don't remember. I had all that stuff for the last time we recorded, but with all the other information I have to give you, you guys Google it. All right? Thank you. So Larto Lake, though, when people refer to like the different areas of Catahoula Parish, Larto Lake is its own thing, and everybody knows where it's at. It's just kind of there. So this happened at the property of Miss Annie Bell Adams. She was at the time of this occurrence, she was 76 years old. She had 7 kids total. Yeah. Her husband's name was Otto.
As most from that generation were wanting to do.
What? No, I have some of my family members. They have like 12. I get it. Same age group area. Yeah. She was born actually in July 13th, 1936. It's a good number away. A long time ago. And her husband Otto and she owned that property, and he had already passed away at the time that this happened. So 7 kids, they had 12 grandkids, 24 great-grandkids, and this was just at the time that she passed away. So imagine now how much more that's spread out. So she lived there with her eldest daughter, who was Debbie Adams. And Debbie, at the time of this incident, was 57. And Debbie had a boyfriend. His name was Lee John, and his last name I'm going to butcher. Ponthieux. Don't have a freaking clue. But from here on out, in the next 3 episodes, we will refer to him as Lee John, and he was actually the junior. And I'm just gonna call him Lee John though, because I'm gonna not butcher that 80 million times and have everyone bleeding from their ears hearing me say it improperly. So we've got Miss Annie Bell, 76, living at her home that she owned with her eldest daughter, Debbie Adams, and her boyfriend, Lee John. And also living on the same property, which, as I mentioned in the intro, was 975 Moody Road. Also...
And they live up to that, too.
In a shed on the front side of the property. Also her daughter, I believe she was younger than Debbie, but not the youngest daughter. Her name was Idris Eileen Ellard, and I think she went by Eileen though, so that's what we're going to refer to her as well.
Yeah, it's too close to Idris Elba.
I don't like it.
But don't you?
But I think it's an I and an E. I think that's the difference. Anyway, she was 51 at the time of this occurrence, and her husband also lived with her in the shed on the property. His name was John D. Ellard. I think he was a junior as well. And his nickname, don't laugh, it's not funny.
You're gonna laugh.
Bozo. So we've got Annie Bell, property owner, the eldest, 76-year-old, the mother of Debbie and Eileen. Debbie is the eldest daughter. She lived in the house with her mom and her boyfriend, Lee John. Eileen and Bozo lived outside in a shed. Eileen was 51, Bozo was 45, Debbie 57, Lee John 41, and Miss Annie Bell was 76, like I said. So now we have the 5 people that live on the property, that were living on the property at the time that this happened, and we are going to go with... The best way to do this is to go in the same way chronologically as things happened in real time for the police, because I think that gets it to where I can lay things out and reveal things to you in the same way that they were revealed in the investigation. So I'm probably going to give you guys a little bit more information just because I can't help it. I get excited. But other than that, we're going to try to follow this as chronologically as possible. All right. So everybody got the 5 people? Did you grab your notepad? No? Okay. Well, if you become a Patreon subscriber here at the end of January, I'll send you one. Okay. So, on
sticky notes too.
August 20th, 2012. And this was the early morning hours at 2:50 in the morning. The 911 dispatch of Catahoula Parish Sheriff's Office got a call. And it was from a Mr. Scott Fields, who said that Debbie Adams had just shown up to his house and she was all bent out of shape and something was going on. Here, talk to her. So he handed her the phone, and then Debbie proceeded hysterically to say that they were in an argument back at her mom's house and they needed to send the cops out because when she ran away to go to this neighbor's house, Scott Fields, that she was now calling 911 from, that she heard 2 shotgun blasts, and she wanted the police to go check and make sure that nobody was hurt. Now, the police, they knew this address. This wasn't the first time. Like I said, they had a call as recently as April of 2012, and from what I gather, that was not the only one in the past 2-3 years that had happened, that they had these occurrences where they had been called out to this address for different reasons, but the majority of them were either disturbing the peace, drunk and disorderly type situations, or just arguments that were getting out of hand and people get worried. And so they get the call. The only officer that's on duty, yes, one officer for the entire parish, yes, because this is a very,
been over this before.
Very small community. Yes, we have been over this before. Anyway, they call him.
Real familiar. Sorry.
And he's okay. So Larto Lake is in the bottom south corner of Catahoula Parish. He was actually in a more northeastern part of the parish. So they tell him, and he was about to get off work. That's why he was up there, because he lived up there. But he takes off. He's coming down towards the Larto Lake area. They also call another deputy who is off duty at the time, but he actually lived on the same road, on Moody Road. So they called him, got him to, wake up, put clothes on, wait for the other deputy to arrive. So they actually were dispatched, or the officer that was in Sicily Island, he was dispatched at 2:53. At 3:19, they got another phone call to 911 from Debbie again, from Scottfield's house, asking if the officers had made it to the house yet, if they knew what was going on. She said she was really worried about her dog. They might, accidentally hurt the dog in the interim. And the dispatch, was like, nope, they're on their way. They're almost there. But you stay there because we need to make sure that you stay safe and that one of the officers will come and get your statement and do what needs to be done. You just wait there. Okay. So that was at 3:27. At 3:40, that was at 3:19. At 3:27, Deputy Wiley and, hold on, there's another deputy.
And Coyote.
So I think it was Detective Wiley and Jackson. But Investigator Wiley was the one.
He was a Wiley one.
That lived on Moody Road, and he testifies later at the trial. But anyway, Wiley and the other officer, they get there, and they are arriving at 3:27, so fairly quickly, honestly. It was about 30 minutes for him to get down there from 35 minutes for him to get down there from Sicily Island to Larto Lake, which is impressive. Google it again, because it's one of those things that I think we went into that on the last time we recorded, and it's just it's a lot. It's a pretty good distance, is all I'm saying. Normal people time,
he was making good
driving
time.
About 45 minutes, maybe an hour, just because of the different grinding of the roads and all the things.
You talking about people that aren't from here?
Because you have to go through Jonesville, and then you have to come down and around, and it's the whole thing. Anyway, so they get there, and because the reason that they had to have two officers and that the one from Sicily Island couldn't go by himself was because of the shots fired. Now, they didn't know if that meant that somebody was there and there was a weapon actively being used or whatever, because the way that Debbie explained it was she just heard two shotgun blasts. She didn't know what actually happened. So they get there, and again, Deputy Wiley, he is familiar with this address. He's familiar with the people. He knows that there's at least 4 other people that should be on this property, or that have been living there. So
just in case you were wondering, if ever you're only you're one police officer for your county, or your parish in this case, knows well your family, it's probably not a good thing.
Well, I mean,
probably not a good thing.
If you think about it, though, because of how small our community is. Like, I'm sure that the sheriff's office knows how many people we got here, or at least they have a decent guess.
Yeah, we're in a village. It's different.
Right, but it's the same stuff. That's what I'm saying. Anyway, my point being is, they know most of these people. They've grown up with most of these people most of their life. They know what's going on. They know the people. So, especially out here in the middle of nowhere, a lot of times, we don't lock our doors. That's just not a thing.
Unless it's to keep the other door from opening.
Right. But, we leave our doors open, our windows open, and even though fresh air is for dead people, I mean, it's one of those things that we don't have as much of a security worry when it comes down to it. So, same thing with them out there in the middle of nowhere. So these officers get there, and they're doing the call, waiting for a response. They're not getting any answers from anybody. It is dead silent. And they go up onto the porch where they know the front door access, or what the entryway to the house is, because like I said, they've been there before. So it's not the actual front door, is like a side porch side door that everybody uses, because out here usually you only use one door to a house. Don't ask me why, it's just a thing. So they go and they're knocking on the door with their police knock, that the one that wakes up the dead. Still nothing. And they know of all people that should actually be there at, 3:30 in the morning, Miss Annabelle, who they know to be, poor in health, should be there. If she's there, she should be in bed sleeping, because it's 3:30 in the morning, right? So when they still get no answer, they try the door. It's unlocked. They continue in, still calling, hey, police, make yourself known. We're here trying to make sure everybody's okay. Welfare check, yada, yada, yada. And they hear Miss Annie's oxygen tank, because she is on oxygen all hours of the day, 24 hours a day.
As most that are on oxygen.
And they follow the oxygen tube all the way into Miss Annie's bedroom, which is immediately off of the living room, from where they entered into the living room from the door they entered in. And they see Miss Annabelle laying on her right side. And they continue into the room, still talking and trying to get a response. They get none, and then within seconds they realize that she is completely covered in blood from her neck area. There is a wound that is so vicious and bloody that it looks like she possibly could have been shot. So they immediately up their ante. They know that this is no longer just a welfare check. This is a crime scene, homicide. Potentially a homicide, but it doesn't look like she had done this to herself. They do a quick clear of the house, make sure nobody is in there, and they fall back to their vehicles, which they had parked side by side in the driveway. Now, this is at about 3:45-ish in the morning, so it's still dark as all hell, and they can't see. There are nothing but woods around this property, around this house. It's like a circle driveway that goes around the house and the sheds, and nothing but trees. And then the river is on the other side, like the three sides that it has. So you've got the driveway comes in, woods, back side of the house is the river. So they're back out to their vehicles, because at this point they don't know if there is a suspect or a perpetrator somewhere still on the property that is watching them, going to come and attack them. Maybe they have a gun or something in the wood line and they're watching, So they fall back to their vehicles and they cover each other. After they call for backup, they cover each other to let each put on their bulletproof vest and to wait backup. And they literally stand back to back for the next 30 minutes, waiting for backup to get there. So at about 3:45, they call into dispatch and let them know that they need backup and send an ambulance, but make sure the ambulance doesn't come down here. We've got to get the scene secure. And then they wake up the chief deputy, which is Mr. Tony Edwards, and then another deputy that they send out there. They also wake up another one of the investigators, Mr. Bubba Roy. That's not his God-given name, but that's what everybody calls him. That's what he's referred to. No, I think his name's like Eldred. Or Eldred, something, I don't know.
Elrod.
Anyway, they call him Bubba Roy, and he is dispatched as well, but his first stop is supposed to be at the address of Mr. Scott Fields to not detain, but to scoop up Debbie and take her as a witness and make sure she's secure and safe. So he's going that way. Tony and the other deputy are heading towards the scene. They arrive at the scene at about 4:15. And roughly the same time, I think, within about 4:10, 4:15, Bubba Roy actually gets to Scott Fields' house and picks up Debbie Adams there and takes her in the patrol car with him. Now, Tony and them get there at about 4:15, and they, at this point, talk to the two officers that were there that had covered each other for the last 30 minutes or so, and the two officers relayed to them the information that, hey, as we were backing out of the house, we saw two more bodies in the front yard, but we couldn't go check because we didn't have backup and we didn't want to get shot because we didn't know if we were safe, yada, yada, yada. So now, at this point, Tony rolls up to the scene. He has no idea that there's more than one person to be found. Like, he thought they were going out for Miss Annie Bell, and that was it. And then he arrives on scene and realizes he's got 3 bodies. So they didn't even do sign of life for the 2 when they saw them, when they came out of the house, because they couldn't risk their own safety to go check. But when they went over to do a full clearing of the scene and to make sure everything was safe that way, and then once they did that, they went to the 2 bodies in the front yard, and they were identified as Eileen Ellard and Bozo Ellard. So husband and wife that lived in the shed, of which they were now deceased in front of, within a few feet of. Both of them look like they have been shot. For sure, Bozo, because the entire top of his skull is missing. And it was scattered so far and in so many pieces that they actually made a GPS coordinate map to be able to identify where they were all over the yard.
This is a rare occasion that I do, in fact, feel bad for laughing. I just find that somewhat amusing that had to be necessary.
Well, because they couldn't... the distance and...
Oh, no, I understand. It's ridiculous. I had never heard of that before.
Like, I think that's the first time I'd ever heard it, and then after that, of course, I heard it like 3 more times in other episodes, but that's the first time I'd ever heard it when I read this 2 years ago. So, and then Eileen, she had such a deep gash, gaping wound on her neck area that they thought that she also had been shot. Now, peculiarly enough, the shed that they lived in...
The she shed?
They noticed that there was, it looked like shotgun pellets had hit the roof and busted out a light bulb, and there were bloody footprints inside the shed, like on top of the comforter and inside the shed door. And now the shed that I keep saying and I'm referring to that Eileen and Bozo lived in, this was a literal glorified, not even an efficiency. It was like a tool shed that they had turned into a quote-unquote apartment bed area. From
the video, it looks like it was probably 8x8 or 10x10, something
very,
like that.
Very small. Literally, they could fit a mattress in it, and the mattress touched both walls. Each side of the wall. They had enough room to hang clothes on one side. They had like a little TV, the one light, and all the electricity that ran to that shed was from an extension cord that was run from the main house. Yeah. So... basically, this thing was just, like I said, it was a glorified efficiency apartment, but it didn't have running water. It didn't even have its own electricity. It was just a electrical, like, it was just the extension cord. So they had that out there, and there were 4 concrete steps up to the door, but when they looked inside, like I said, they saw pellets of a shotgun. It looked like a shotgun had been shot through, either into it or up through it. And the light bulb had burst, like I said, with the comforter and stuff on the bed, but there weren't any like big blood spots. It was just the bloody footprints on top of the comforter, and they could see distinct patterns in a couple of them, but there were 2 different ones actually. I saw that mentioned, and outside of the shed, they had the 4 steps on the bottom step.
There were 2 different ones. There were 2 different distinct patterns.
Yes,
I thought
2 different types of footprints. Yes,
or
shoe prints. Yes,
okay,
in the bloody.
I thought you were still talking about shell patterns.
No. Just the one that I could see, and then the one that I mentioned now. For whatever reason, and from court documents and the police reports, they said that they thought there were 4 shots discharged, but I don't, and I can get more into that later, but they said something about 4 shots. I don't know for sure about the 4-shot thing. But it seemed like, because of the shell casings, I think is where they got that from, because there were spent shells that they found outside the door of the shed, and then one further away from this bottom step outside, and then I think they had one other one closer to the bodies. I'm really not sure, but I know that they found the empty shell casings, so they assumed that there were that many shots. They didn't find any shell casings in the house. They found an empty box that would hold shells on top of the fridge, on the porch. They also found the wallet for Lee John on the porch, and that was pretty much it at that time. Now, it started raining as soon within a couple minutes of the chief deputy. Or the chief investigator, Tony Edwards, when he got there at about 4:15, within the next 3-4 minutes, it started pouring rain, which made it really difficult for them to get an accurate assessment, or especially not to document an accurate depiction of the scene, because once it started raining, it started washing away the blood that was on the bottom step, which I think Tony later testified that it was thick, it was a massive amount of blood, and it had coagulated, and it was just, there was a ton, and he believed that that was where Eileen had actually died, was right there. She'd either been attacked and like laid there and then they moved her. That was his opinion as far as I could gather. So, but from the pictures and the videos, it doesn't look like as much, and that's because it's been waterlogged. So they got to working the scene as fast as they could. Bubba Roy actually picked up Debbie and brought her back to the scene at about 4:20. And he actually pulled in behind the shed where the bodies were on the other side in front of it so that she couldn't see the actual scene of what was happening. But he pulled in and left her in his patrol car while he went to go help process the scene, because everybody was scrambling at this point, trying to get everything documented and get as much evidence as they could preserved, because it started pouring. So probably not in the proper protocol to take a witness / unknown to the crime scene, especially when you
family member,
when you still haven't caught I say caught, you haven't located the 5th member of this household, when you don't know, and like he's the only one missing. Lee John is the only one who hasn't been made contact with, and they still don't know where he is at this time. But they brought her back and put her in a patrol car at the scene, and then Bubba Roy went to go help process the scene. So, like I said, probably changed protocol after that happened, but
maybe hired one more person to work in.
Maybe, because usually in my mind, I would think that they would take the witness or whoever back to the station. Like that would be your first move.
To who?
To someone that's working there, to the jailer that's supposed to be there 24 hours a day, or their deputy that's there. Yeah. So, anyway, they're sitting there at 4:20. They pull in, and he, like I said, he helps process the scene. He actually takes the video that was the documentation of the crime scene video, and they did the best that they could for the time. And then at about 5:06, so about 40 minutes later, 5:06-ish, he gets back into the car with Debbie and does a quote-unquote interview, just like a quick thing. He uses his recorder from the back of his car that he keeps with him, and he's talking to her about what had happened that night, where were the only person that wasn't there was Lee John. Does she know where he would go? And so on and so forth. And it comes to the question of, how would he have left? Are there any vehicles missing? And she said, well, my mom's car, my car, looks like Bozo's motorcycle's missing. And at that point, they put out a bolo.
For Bozo.
For the motorcycle, which I think was like black and had flames on it. And they're still processing the scene. And I think, if I remember correctly, I think they took Debbie at that point back to the station to get another recorded interview, just to keep her out there where it was safe, because at this point now they have prime suspect Lee John has taken off on a motorcycle. They didn't find the shotgun at the scene, so they don't know for sure what's going on. They just know they don't have a shotgun. They have shotgun shells. They have 3 people dead, 1 person missing. He's a prime suspect, and for no other reason than to see what his story is, because they didn't find him dead and they haven't seen hide nor hair of him. And so that's where they're at right now. They take Debbie back to the station. They continue to process the scene, and at about 7:30, as they're wrapping up the scene, because they've called in other law enforcement agencies to help them in the manhunt or the search for Lee John at this point. I think they called LaSalle and the Concordia Parish Sheriff's Office to try to come out and help in the search, because this is a very small department. We've talked about this many times, Catahoula Parish especially. So they've got all these different agencies out looking, and they're wrapping up the scene around 7:30 that morning, and they've got the bodies taken out, Debbie's taken out, and as they're about to leave the scene, they get a call from, I believe it was, his name is Johnny Adams, but I don't think he was related. He was like the teacher for the middle school out there or something, and he called and said, hey, there's a motorcycle out here at the end of Moody Road where it intersects with the road that the Scott Fields, the house where Debbie went to, that intersection right there. that's where the motorcyclist crashed in the ditch. Did y'all know that? And they're like, no, thank you. And then, they finish up at the scene, and between 7:30, 7:35-ish, everybody, all of the team that was there at the scene that was processing left. So 0 police presence at the scene of a triple homicide that has just happened. There's no one there. No one.
Well.
That they know of. So, they go out to where the motorcycle is, and yep, that's Bozo. They actually run the registration. It's not even in his name. And they come to find out later, he was actually just, like, quote-unquote test driving it, because he had planned to be buying it from the other guy that was still registered. It was, yeah. So, technically it wasn't his bike, but they found out that away that it was actually the bike that Bozo was in possession of that had been driven from the house to there. And they could tell...
Possession is 9/10 the law.
They could tell from the trail and track that whoever was driving this motorcycle had swerved, veered off, lost control, and it, crashed into the ditch. And as they're doing this, and as they're going and processing this, they've still got all the other agencies and officers out looking for him. They kind of tighten their circle down because now they think he's probably in this area. They get another little tidbit that comes in on the wire that Lee John's sister, Miss Shelley Cole, she calls in and says, are y'all still looking for my brother? Because he just called me and said that he's going to kill himself, but he wants to see me first, and he doesn't know if he can do it, but he did something really bad, and mentioned something about killing them people, and they're like, oh my God, where was he? Did he tell you where he was? And sister's like, yeah, he's at Annie's house. He's at Miss Annie Bell's house. And they're like, well, how do you know?
We were just there.
Because he called from the landline. The landline. Come to find out, he was just hanging out in the woods watching the police process the scene and do everything. And once they took off, he just kind of rolled back up, went back in the house. Later, he said that he went in, changed his shirt, grabbed some more beer, grabbed some more shotgun shells. He planned on killing himself, and then decided he should talk to his sister before he did that because apparently they were close. And so he got the house phone,
only polite.
Called his sister, talked to her for a little bit, and then, like I said, got some more beer, and then took off back off into the woods. He didn't even bother putting the phone back. Rude. They actually later they located the phone, and I'll tell you about that here in just a minute. So once they get this information from Miss Shelley, they they realize that he's back at the freaking house on the landline, right? So they're like, oh, great. Okay, so this is what we need to do. We got to get another search warrant because at this point they have already left the scene. They have no right to go back except for the fact that they think he's in there. But the probable cause that they have to think he's in there still needs a search warrant to be signed by a judge before they get into that house. So they get the Louisiana State Police actually to do and submit the warrant, and Judge Leo Booth ends up signing that a little bit later, but it takes a little bit of time. But in the meantime, they get everybody that they can to go back to the house. They even call in the Rapid SWAT team to go back to this house and set up a perimeter. They actually set up a command center at the end of the driveway. Okay, so they got the command center at the end of the driveway. They're setting up a perimeter around this house, and they're yelling at him like, hey, give yourself up, come on out. And when they finally do get the search warrant, the Rapid SWAT team actually has a robot because they're worried, right? They're worried that he's got this shotgun and he's sitting up in there waiting to shoot any police officer that comes through the door. So they send in the little robot, poor little guy. They run him through there into every room. They find no one. Obviously he's not there. I already told you guys that, by the way. So robot goes in, nobody's there. They go pull the robot out, they check and sweep the scene further and just make sure no shotgun, and it's testified to later that they didn't notice a bloody shirt or anything different at the house. And a couple of balls I feel like were dropped, but I still feel like they did a pretty decent job for what they were working with, and the amount of experience that is not usually had, especially in a case like this. There was a lot of moving parts to this, and I'm still impressed that all of these agencies that came together to work together worked together as well as they did. So kudos to them.
That is fair.
So now that they realize that he's not in the house, someone by the command center realizes that they can see something off on the tree line, and they walk up and realize that it's the freaking house phone in the tree line. So now they have reason to believe and to suspect that he has gone back into the woods, and they're worried that he might be trying to finish the job off or what have you. So they make sure that Debbie's safe, and then they, again, all points bulletin, they're trying to find this guy. Everybody be on the lookout. Everybody, they're patrolling different areas. They take shifts and they rotate around, trying to make sure that everybody is keeping their eye out for this guy. And they don't have a lot of places to look or things to they don't have any information as to where he might have gone, where he might be. They've got search dogs, they've got hounds that are walking through the woods trying to pick up his scent. But again, heavy rain. And if you roll around in the dirt long enough, you're gonna smell like the rest of the woods anyway. So they keep doing this, and it turns into afternoon, and they're still looking. And they really don't have any reason to believe he'd still be in the area, except for maybe the fact that he would, either want to talk to Debbie or want to come back and finish her off, because they don't know the situation yet. So they eventually get a call, and this is when it's already late evening, almost get like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, that they get a call from,
so late,
once again, Scott Fields. And going on at Scott Fields' house right now is they've got a bunch of family over there that is mourning and drinking, because obviously by this point they've already notified the family and let them know what had happened, or what they believe to have happened, at least that their family members were deceased, and that there was an investigation. They were still on the look for him, and so they're over there drinking their sorrows away. And there's a big group, I think, if I remember correctly, I think the testimony was that it was like 10 to 15 people at least that they noticed. Anyway, when Scott calls 911 and lets them know, like, hey, I see him. He's hanging out on a fence post in my backyard back here, drinking a beer. Leaning on the fence post, drinking a beer. So when the officers get there, the ones that are closest by, because there were officers real close by, and I believe this was Chris Bath, B-A-T-H, Bath, that ended up on the scene first, or him and another deputy at the same time. And when they went to go check out the spot where he had been seen, they actually saw like an open beer can and empty beer cans right there in that area. So like, okay, this is a good lead. They're walking, there's a fence line right there. Like I said, he was leaning against the fence post, so they're walking the fence line, and the other officer, I think, is going through a gate. Bath, I believe he just crawled over the fence. I'm not sure. But as he's going to investigate, and he's just looking around, he hears a twig snap off to the side. And he looks, pulls out his weapon, and he's looking, and he takes a couple steps closer, and as he gets closer, he trains his light on him, because it's dark. Remember, we're talking... This is now, I believe, after midnight by the time that they're walking out there with flashlights and looking. And he sees Lee John laying down, and as soon as the light hits him, the flashlight hits him, he jumps up to his knees and puts his hands up. And at that same time, the officer notices the shotgun directly in front of Lee John. So you want to talk about anxiety, trepidation, scared to deafness, because all he has to do is lean down, turn, and shoot with that shotgun, and that there's not a whole lot a vest can do for you.
Lean down, turn, and nothing. You just
well, anyway, the good news is there was none of that. He started to make commands very loudly to Lee John to put his hands up, put his hands behind his head, stand up, don't lean forward, don't make any sudden movements. And he's doing this very clear, very loud, so that all of his other people that are there and arriving can hear him and hear what he's saying. That way they are aware that he has found him. That way he doesn't waste any time trying to tell them. He's doing double work by yelling at him as loud as he can, to make sure everybody else around knows the situation, what's going down. So no issues, though. They get him in handcuffs. They pick up, and what they find on him and on his person, they find the shotgun that had a live round in it, I believe, and then he had shotgun shells in his pockets, as well as a Gerber folding pocket knife and a lighter, and I think that was everything. I don't think he had any beer or anything on him at that point. I think he left it by the fence.
Or in his belly.
Or in his belly. So they take him, and as they're walking back, the family that is at the house of Scott Fields, where right next to where they have got him in custody, they see that they have him, and they start mob approaching, right? Because they realize that they've now got the guy that they think has murdered their 3 family members, their loved family members. And the officers actually testified about this too. They were very concerned for not just his safety, but their safety, because they didn't want to get lynched in a scuffle. So they quickly get him into the vehicle. They quickly get him out of there and take him to the Catahoula Parish Sheriff's Office to be processed and booked and put in the jail. And that was at, I want to say, 1:30 something in the morning. 1:32 was when he called and said he had the suspect in custody. And they got him back to the sheriff's office and got him processed, and everybody could take a deep breath and go take a nap, because some of these guys had been working on 2 or 3 hours of sleep. Even though they were rotating, it wasn't a lot. And I mean, when you know somebody out there, or when you believe someone is out there that is capable of killing 3 human beings that supposedly they lived either with or around and had been around for 3 years, especially
and in such a manner as this,
especially the 76-year-old Annie Bell, that was damn near helpless to any kind of attack in her general direction. Like, if you could do that to her, there is no telling and no end to your limitation of what you can do. So they get him back.
Or there's a lot of limitation because you chose the weakest target.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, there is no limit to what you're capable of, because if you can do that to someone that frail and fragile, Anyway, so everybody can now take a deep breath, take a nap, and let the jailer deal with him for the time being. And then they don't actually do an interview with him until that same day, but much later in the afternoon, almost evening.
Fun drinking game for this 3-part special. Anytime you hear they don't actually, take a shot.
They don't actually. Well, no, I don't want to do that, because
you won't make it.
Look, I live in this parish. I live in Catahoula Parish, and
look,
they
need some constructive criticism, and they didn't do very well on this one.
And they know that. And they know that. You can tell by the testimony. They know that. But again, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. They understood that they knew they were over their heads. They were in over their heads. They were in a position and in a situation of which they had not been in before, and that they did not have any experience in. If they did, it was very little, and they knew they needed help. So they did the right thing. They immediately contacted other agencies, and again, to their amazing credit, they worked very well together. There was no dick measuring. There was no, jurisdictional stuff. This was just catch this bad guy, get this stuff done, and let's try to do it as best we can. And I think that they, for what they had, I think they did a decent enough job. There absolutely is room for improvement, and you guys know that as well as I do, and so I don't think we should say it or rub anybody's nose in it, and I'm definitely not saying any derogatory comments about them at all.
And their teamwork aspect, absolutely.
Right.
I have immense respect for people that are able to lay down their pride and actually work with others to get shit done. Right,
because, that is a complaint that happens a lot in these scenarios where the police or the investigators of different departments or whatever, they couldn't get their shit together, and it caused the family more pain and more unnecessary, frustration and turmoil, all of the things, because it wasn't necessary. They could have got things done and processed faster, or they could have solved something, and now, it just, a lot more could have gone wrong that didn't. They did a good job for what they did, mostly. But again, anybody can look at any situation on the planet and be like, oh, well, I see what you did wrong there. It's easy to look back now and say that. When you're in a situation like that, it's really hard to think and to get things right perfectly every time. Nobody is ever going to. That's why we have a court to be able to describe and to decide.
Just focus the camera lens.
Yeah, well, until we see that. So, but that is where part 1 is going to end, guys. That's where we're going to leave you, with him sitting in jail waiting to be interviewed. And I'm going to tell you, the first interview that they do opens a whole new bag of worms. A whole new thing. It blows out everything we already thought we knew. And
can of worms.
Can of worms. Bag of worms.
No,
bucket of.
We're not fishing. It's a bad thing.
Bucket of bitches. No, that's not it. Okay.
Also,
bag of wieners.
You want.
Also, okay. So, next episode, we're going to get more into that. We're going to go through Lee John and his statements that he gives, statements, plural, that he gives to police. We're going to get into some of the background of his life and cover that. And then, yeah, that's been a thing. That was
one of the only things that we haven't talked about. Actually.
That I haven't talked to anybody about because I didn't know much about it last time we recorded. So like I said, I've gone pretty deep into this one, and we'll get into that and talk more about his trial and things of that nature once we get there. So, thank you guys for listening. We hope you have a wonderful, and if you listen to this on Christmas, bless you. Merry Christmas. Nobody sneezed. I just said bless you, but. Y'all have a wonderful Christmas. Have a wonderful New Year's. If you don't listen to this till way later, happy holidays of all the things. And I just hope you're happy in general and that things are going well. And we will see you guys.
When we see you.
Well, next week. I'm releasing this every Monday.
Quick break, reconvene, and meet back up for the next part.
Right. Whenever, I mean, like, you might hear us in like 12 seconds after this is over. Do how you do.
That's what I'm saying. Take a quick break, get you some food, go to the bathroom.
Yeah, because this next part's going to be rough. Because we're going to get into how they died and everything like that. It's going to be pretty rough, guys. So, there's going to be an extra warning at the beginning. Yeah. Alright, well, y'all be good, stay safe, and take care out there.
See you next time.
This has been an Elf Audio production.